Hey, welcome into the hot shop, everyone. Oh my gosh, that was loud. Ooh. Okay, trying again. There we go. So, we have a visiting artist today. Her name is Kartini Thomas. And we have her slideshow going on the screen just now, showing off some of the previous work she's made and some inspiration photos, drawings for what we'll see throughout the residency. And this is the last day of her residency here at the museum. But luckily, because of that, we have tons of her finished pieces out on display right here on this cart, on the front pedestal, and also this front table right here. So feel free to take a closer look at those at any time. Come down to the front, take photos, anything you like. And we're going to see them make one more piece in the hot shop. They were talking about making a version of something like this right here on the front pedestal. So we'll see some sort of creature made. And we actually just finished a piece that's going to be fitting over top of this one right here before we had our lunch break, which is actually sketched up there. So our visiting artist is actually a ceramic artist. And a lot of people are surprised when they see people come into the museum and they don't necessarily work with glass, but they're here for an artist residency. They're making work here. But luckily, we have a whole team of glass blowers that help every visiting artist that comes through. And they have been the hands, and she's been the brains behind all of this work. So that's how all of this works. We did just have an artist talk at 1 p.m. where Kartini talked about herself as an artist, her inspirations, all of this. And if you're interested in watching it, we actually live stream every single day that we're down on the hot shop floor, so you could pull that up and you can hear about her work. Or if you're really interested in one of these pieces in particular, you can go back in time even like a few days and you can find live stream of us making these pieces. So yeah, we're gonna get started on one more piece. For those who are just joining in, I was pointing out this piece on the front pedestal. We're gonna make a creature kind of like this. And of course, feel free to ask any questions that you guys have. I'll just come over when I see your hand raised and answer any questions, which I can also relay information back and forth between you and the visiting artist. Now, about the hot shop itself. So I'll give a quick overview of the hot shop just so you understand what you're seeing as we work. And then I'll hop into explaining the process as they go along. So the first thing I always point out in the hot shop is the glass furnace, so the tank that actually holds molten glass inside of a large ceramic crucible. This is where we start all of our pieces right behind those doors. We have a furnace on either side of the hot shop. And then we also have these large open face furnaces at every bench, and these are used to simply reheat the glass. We're trying to make it malleable again, or we're trying to just keep it warm enough that it doesn't break. And the temperatures are pretty high. We're working between 21 and 2300 degrees Fahrenheit for the equipment itself. And the glass always has to be 1000 degrees Fahrenheit or warmer when we're working with it to prevent thermal shock. So there, we've just picked up our first gather in the back. This is all just clear glass. So I mentioned we have only picked up clear glass from the furnace. So the way that we get our color is using a few different methods, but one method that we're seeing right here, we took the clear glass, we rolled it in a dish. This dish has shards of colored glass sitting inside of it. So now we'll have a speckled layer of color on our piece. Yeah, glass is definitely a team effort. Even if you're making something as small as just like a little cup, you usually need somebody sitting at the bench shaping, of course, with the tools. You need somebody sitting at the end of the pipe blowing air into the glass. And then you usually need a third person who can flatten the bottom, for example. Or if you're making something even more complicated, you need like a fourth person to help you turn the pipe if it's heavy, or maybe bring over a second component that you'll attach together. So yeah, usually you'll see teams of 3 or 4. So this large metal table is called the marver, and it has a thick slab of stainless steel on top. Oftentimes when we're rolling on this table, we're doing more than just shaping, we're actually cooling the glass. So wherever the glass touches the table, it's sucking heat out, and that prevents it from blowing out too much in that direction. So it makes the glass stiffer when it's colder. Oh yeah, and this is a pipe cooler for those who can't see around the corner there. There's just a little trough of water that we set the pipe into. So if you see them going to that corner, that's what's happening. So something I haven't mentioned to you guys yet is, of course, the fact that we're working at 2 different benches at the same time. It's really important to have multiple places to work at the same time, especially if you're bringing pieces together. So we are, Alex was just telling me, going to be working on the mouth for this creature over on the left bench, which I'll reference again, this piece on the front pedestal for anyone that hasn't seen it yet. And this is all going to start with a technique called a color drop or a color overlay, which we can actually see happening in the background on the screen. We drop some colored glass down on top of the clear bubble, and then we'll spread it, completely covering the bubble. So when we blow this piece out, all we're going to see is the color. So all of our glass is coming from the furnaces, which are the tanks with the closed doors. There's one that has a do not open sign on it, if that helps you guys pinpoint it a little bit better. And then there's also one on this side, though. That's the one that we're using today. And yeah, these hold up to 1,000 pounds of clear molten glass at 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit. Yeah, and it's always running. It is running 24/7. That's the one piece of equipment that we keep on all the time. Everything else we can turn off when we're done using it, and then turn it on maybe an hour or so before we get started again. So while we're making the mouth over on the left bench, we're making the eyes at the center bench right here. So the glass was stuffed into a mold first, and that's what's giving us these ridges all the way around the eye. And then we, of course, flatten it in between the jacks, which are those two metal blades, and a wooden paddle on the other end, which I dipped in water to help prevent it from burning up too much. Yeah, that's a good question. So these pieces right here are both using something called cane, which are these sticks of colored glass. We have a ton of these pieces of cane laid out on this front table right here. So basically we take the cane, we lay it all out side by side by side, all on a metal tray that kind of just holds them in place. And then we take our bubble of glass and we roll it over top of the cane to pick it up. So we end up with stick straight striping. But with this piece, we have to go a step further because we have two layers of cane that are overlapping each other. I think the way that they did this one in particular is they twisted the one layer of cane that they had, and then they probably just rolled it right over top a second layer of cane and then twisted it in the opposite direction just a little bit further. So they ended up with kind of crisscrossing lines. Like the cane itself, or just like in general, something that's thin and long? So interestingly enough, when it comes to those really long, thin pieces, like I think a lot of people know what a Chihuly chandelier looks like, hopefully, where there are these really long, delicate kind of pieces or tendrils of glass. Obviously, they're not going to be able to really fit that back inside of this furnace to reheat it, right? So what they do is they prepare it first by, getting their color, getting all the material they need. They stuff it in a mold maybe if they want texture, and then they heat it up like crazy, and they have to do it all in one go. They have to stretch it out and then immediately break it off of the pipe and put it away. They can't reheat it any further. And as long as it can fit inside of that large black box on our wall, then that's how big we can make a piece. Yeah, because it needs to be able to cool down slowly still, no matter what. Yeah, there are people I saw one time, they were in some sort of lift. They stood on it, and then it rose up, and they were able to stretch the glass all the way down towards the floor. It's really cool. Oh yeah, this will be important to point out. So when we finish something like the eyes, for example, we have to set them aside and keep them warm while we finish everything else. So we put them inside of this silver box right here, which has a flame in the corner of it, and it's sitting at 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's basically just going to put it on pause, keep it warm enough to not break, and then we can pull it back out later on and attach it. The cane? The sticks of colored glass? Okay. Oh, you know what? Actually, I have a video of them making them. So could I have the, yeah, okay, they're listening. The cane pulling video is on the screen now. This is kind of cool. It's a silent video, so I'll explain as they go. We start with solid colored glass that we attach to the end of our pipe. we'll wrap some layers of clear glass around it, which you could see in this video. Then we attach a second pipe, usually after shaping it more cylindrical, and then stretch it between the two. And as long as you're pulling slowly, if you pull too quickly, it'll just get too thin. It'll kind of drop towards the floor. Pull nice and slow, lay it across these wooden ladders so it doesn't break. If it touches the cold concrete, it'll break. And then we just break it up into smaller pieces. So this small of a piece of glass doesn't have to be annealed. It doesn't have to be cooled down slowly overnight. We can just let it cool down in a few minutes in the air. And then, yes, this is usually picked up off of that metal tray, as you saw, and then turned into its final form. And the different colors come from different metals, minerals, and oxides mixed into the glass, by the way. So one of the most expensive colors that we use, it's kind of like prized right now, it's gold chloride in glass, and that creates like a ruby-ish, pinkish, purplish color. It's a really nice one. So for those who joined in a little bit more recently, I'll point to this piece on the front pedestal again here. This is a piece that was made over the last few days or so of the residency for our visiting artist. And I was told that we're going to be making something along these lines. I think we're going to have some different colors and maybe a little bit of a different shape, but we're making a creature. So we have the eyes being made right here at the center bench. And then we have the mouth being made over on the left bench. And once they have those smaller details made, they'll usually just kind of set it aside. And then we'll focus on the main body itself and then bring everything together at the very end. So that'll take up, I would imagine, pretty much the second half of the day entirely. But we will see this piece finished and fully put together. Yeah, so visiting artists here, which our visiting artist is Kartini Thomas, over on the left. She's in the blue shirt. We basically, when visiting artists come in, they come in with a bunch of designs and ideas, and they show them to our team that works here full time. And the team's job is to, be the hands. They bring the glass to fruition. So we have a pretty big team. We have 4 or 5 people that work full time here, and they all have 20 to 35-ish years of experience working with glass. So very professional team. And that means that the artist that comes through doesn't really necessarily have to even work with glass themselves. So Kartini actually works with ceramic art. And she's going to be incorporating, she told me, some fused glass into her work in the future. She has her studio in France, where she's been working for 20 years. So yeah, interesting. And we have visiting artists here pretty frequently. Can I have the images of our visiting artist's work, please? Yeah, I got a good question that made me think of something that I should talk about. So, when we have visiting artists come through, usually the way that they're getting a residency is through like an application, and it's kind of competitive. There are a lot of people that apply, and when the artist has a full residency like this, like a 5-day residency, and it's through that process specifically, they will donate a piece to the museum, and it goes into our red hot auction, and then they keep everything else. And I'm sure that it really depends on like what kind of art they're making. If they only make like 2 giant complex pieces, then they're probably not going to be donating like one giant complex piece, but they do donate something to the museum, and then it's sold during our red hot auction. And this is a really important time of year for the Museum of Glass. We have the red hot auction coming up in mid to late September this year, and a lot of artwork is sold or auctioned, as the name suggests, during this time. It raises a lot of funds for the museum, and we've been preparing for it a lot already. We make tons of goblets and decanters, specifically built around the theme of the auction that year. And this year they're making goblets that have a seahorse in the stem. A very beautiful, complex seahorse with gold leaf. They're really incredible to watch. So yeah, just kind of fun. So at this point, we finished both the eyes. We set them aside in the garage to keep them warm. And the color that you saw on those eyes is pretty true to itself. It's a celadon green, so really light blue-green color. Sometimes colors are not very accurate when you're looking at them and they're hot in the hot shop. So for anyone that's recently joined in, I wanted to give another little introduction as to what we have going on real quick, and then we'll jump back into the process of explaining what we see as it goes on. So we have a visiting artist, Kartini Thomas, and she's the one in the blue shirt. She's been kind of walking around and checking in on the different benches So I'll point her out when I see her again. But we'll have her slideshow playing up on the screen so you can get an idea of what she's made in the past and some ideas for the residency, which a lot of which have already been translated into glass right here on the cart and right there on the front pedestal. And there's a visiting artist over on the left. Everyone else on the floor, they work for the museum and they help visiting artists that come through. So they're like the hands or the sous chef, and she's the chef. She's the conductor of the orchestra. Yeah, and that's actually what we were working on earlier today. We made the yellow hat with the ears, and then the body itself is actually right here. It's a pretty big piece. That one took a full day, and then a little bit more than that as well. Thank you. So we're working on a piece that's a lot like what we'll see on the front pedestal right now, where we'll have a head or the body of a creature. We have two eyes and then a mouth. We've already worked on the two eyes, finished those. They're just staying warm inside of that silver box there. And then we've finished the mouth, or maybe, I think we might still be finishing the mouth over on the left bench at this moment. And then we'll get started on the body and bring everything together pretty soon. Yeah, so I just got a question about the building that we're inside of. And luckily, I've gotten this question many times before, so I have an answer for this. This is actually built based off of the area's history, interestingly enough. So this area used to be used for a lot of logging purposes. I think they would quite literally like float logs down the waterway. And they had these wood burners dotted along the waterway that we would use to burn leftover wood scraps. And they were called wigwam burners or beehive burners. They were shaped just like this cone. But when the area stopped being used very much for logging, they eventually just sat there, eventually were demolished. And then the Bridge of Glass, a museum of glass, was built. Everything was kind of cleaned up. And so to kind of pay tribute to the area's history, they built this cone kind of based off of that piece of equipment. And of course, it's tall to make it flashy. It's shiny to make it flashy. It's not necessarily like the best hot shop shape. It's not bad, but yeah, oftentimes people are like, oh, is it tall to let the heat out? But not really. It's just kind of flashy. Yeah. So up on the screen over on that left bench, the series of techniques to get from just a blob of colored glass to this is pretty interesting. It's kind of hard to create an oval out of glass, or maybe not intuitive. But basically the way that this was done, they heated up the glass, they stuffed it into a mold that gave them the ridges all the way around. And then they started to kind of push in on the glass to start that oval shape. But to get the full oval shape, they have to go a step further. They heat it up, and then they start spinning the pipe pretty quickly. And that is creating a centrifugal force that's pulling the glass outward even further, where it was already sticking out a little bit. That's why we had to push it in ourselves to start off with. So now we have this shape. This is exactly what we did for the ears of the creature that we made earlier today. For anyone that was here for that. Yeah, for anyone that didn't hear this earlier, if you're curious about seeing any part of the process that you may have missed, we live stream every single day that we're doing something on the hot shop floor. So we're live streaming this right now, for example, on YouTube. And we've live streamed every single step along the way of these pieces on the cart, on the pedestal, and on the table right here. Yeah, exactly. It's just on YouTube. There's a button on everyone's channels on YouTube that says live. You just click that, and we have live streams saved from years and years and years ago as well. We save them and never delete them. It's kind of wacky to see mixing water and molten glass, but sometimes when we have two colors right next to each other or clear next to a different color, that the color is really stiff. It doesn't want to heat up, and then the clear is just getting hotter and hotter. Sometimes we'll just pour water on it, and it will crack the surface, but it's so hot that it almost doesn't matter. It'll just continue to stick together because the inside is still like taffy. So yeah, we just poured a little bit of water on that, and now we can continue on. And we brought this to the left bench, which we have a view of up on the screen. And welcome into the hot shop to everyone who just joined in. We have a visiting artist, Kartini Thomas. She's the one in the blue shirt over on the left side of the hot shop. And everyone else on the floor is working for the museum. They help the visiting artists that come through basically bring their designs, drawings, visions to life. And we'll see a creature like this one on the front pedestal created in the hot shop for the second half of the day. And we should see this completely finished, put together and everything. So we already have the eyes for this piece created. We're working on finishing the mouth, and then we'll start on the body and then bring everything together. If you ever see us disappearing with a piece of glass and then you don't know where it went, or randomly appearing with a piece of glass, it's usually coming in and out of this silver box right here called the garage, which sits at 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's basically just keeping the piece warm enough to not break. Yeah, so I went ahead and asked, and they are making mouths at both of the benches right now. They're making mouths. The one at the center bench here is maybe a little bit too big, so they started on the one over on the left, which is a little bit smaller. Doesn't hurt to have too many. And yeah, for those who just joined in, just for a little reference, this creature was made in the first half of the residency that our visiting artist has right now. Our visiting artist, Kartini Thomas, in the blue shirt. She designed all the pieces that we're seeing finished out here, and we're going to see one more kind of like this made in a hot shop. Different colors, maybe a little bit of a different shape. And yeah, we've already finished off the eyes. We're working on the mouth right now, and then we'll make the body and bring everything together. So we're getting there. So with this piece of the center bench, we're going to remove it from the first pipe that it was created on by attaching a second pipe somewhere on the piece where it won't be in the way. And then we just break the first pipe away with a little tap. And I know that seemed like magic, but earlier they were squeezing down with a cold metal tool on that connection, which was enough to create thermal shock and then pop it off. So now we can fix up that opposite end where it was attached to the pipe, and this will be ready to attach to the face of our piece. Yeah, welcome into the hot shop, you guys. So the piece that you're pointing at on the front pedestal is actually really similar to what we're working on right now. We already have the eyes created, and we're working on finishing the mouth right here at the center bench. And then we'll create the body and attach everything together. Yeah, this creature is designed by our visiting artist, Kartini Thomas, and she's the one in the blue shirt over on the left side of the hot shop. And everyone else down on the floor is working for the museum, and they help our visiting artists bring their designs to life. And could we have our visiting artist slideshow on the screen, please? So for those who haven't seen this yet, it's been a little bit since I played this. Up on the screen, there is a slideshow going of our visiting work. This includes designs, previously made pieces, inspiration photos, and again, we also have tons of pieces out on display that we've made over the last 4 days of our residency. And feel free to come down, take a closer look, take photos of things that are out. So we get our clear glass from the large tank with the closed door. That's what Gabe just came out of with that mass of clear glass on the end of the pipe. And then this is a blowpipe specifically, so we can blow a bubble of air inside of it by blowing into the opposite end. He's actually capping it with his thumb as well, keeping that pressure in there until it bursts out into the glass. So now we have a bubble of clear. And that is the start to all of our blown projects. Oh yeah, if any of you are local and didn't know about this thing already, there's something called Third Thursday where we are open late at the museum, and it's also free admission from 5 to 8 p.m. every third Thursday of every month. And this is true for the Tacoma Art Museum as well. And I can't remember if there's any other things that participate in that, but they're so close to each other, you can kind of just walk back and forth between them that evening. So yeah, every third Thursday in the evening, we'll have free admission. And we have different artists that'll be there than who you're seeing now, of course. So if you want to see something new. And this is the coloring process for this piece. We took a solid piece of colored glass called color bar, melted it down, and dropped it on top of the clear bubble. And could we have the image of color bar real quick, please? So luckily we have an example of this that I could show off up on the screen. This is color bar. It's how we get all of our color shipped in. It's different metals, minerals, and oxides mixed into clear glass. We just break off a segment of it, melt it down, and then layer it within the walls of the piece. So a colored piece of glass like this blue you're seeing here is actually just a thin layer of color, sometimes like paper thin or even thinner, depending on what we're going for, and mostly clear glass. Thank you. And welcome in, you guys. Just in case you haven't been in here earlier, I wanted to give a quick overview and then hop into explaining what we're seeing going on. So the piece that's on the front pedestal right there is actually kind of similar or along the lines of what we're working on right now. We already have the eyes and the mouth made for this creature. So next we're working on the body. So this is the very start. All of our pieces have to start off this small. and we'll gather layer upon layer of clear to build up some mass and give us more material to work with, and then blow it out into the body of this piece. And this is designed by our visiting artist, Kartini Thomas, and she's the one who is in the blue shirt just behind me here. Everyone else on the floor is working for the museum, and they help visiting artists that come through. And that tank with the closed door there, that's where we're getting our molten clear glass. It's sitting at 2100 degrees Fahrenheit in there. So that's kind of the high end of the temperatures for the glass specifically that we're working with. So each time we get a new layer of clear, we sit down, we use the block, which is that wooden spoon-shaped tool, to kind of smooth and even it out. We expand the bubble a little bit, and then we let it cool down, and then the cycle continues. We always want basically this solid core within the next layer of clear, so we always let it sit and cool down beforehand. And right now, the color's going to be impossible to see. We'll just have to wait and see what this color is. I thought it was like a ruby pink or gold chloride pink. And this is just a pipe cooler that we're using briefly, so a trough of water that we'll set the pipe into.
What have we been listening to all day? Did he? Okay.
So now we're able to go for our next gather. And we have this torch that we'll be using on and off throughout the day. But this is a hot torch, gets up to about 5,000 degrees Fahrenheit, hence the name. And we're using it to heat up the very surface of the bubble at the moment, just to try to get a little air bubble out of the side of the piece. And again, there already is an air bubble inside of all of this glass. It's just pretty deep in there right now, but when we start blowing into the end of the pipe, it'll expand rapidly, and you'll be able to see the color kind of come close to the surface of the piece. So we've reached a much faster pace, very important part of the process where we have blown this out. And then we started the jack line, which is this divot right here off the end of the pipe. We're basically just creating a purposeful weak point right here, or a breaking point. And then we can continue to blow this out and shape it into its final shape. So by blowing this out, we're thinning the walls of the piece out, we're thinning the color out, and because of this, the piece is going to be a lot lighter in color than you originally saw. Originally it was so rich that you basically couldn't see through the color at all. And you can see that pink color a little bit better now as it starts to cool down. And then using this pad, which is actually just folded up newspaper, by the way, that we just splash with a little bit of water, we're able to kind of squeeze into the glass. We're creating a waste. We're just kind of controlling the shape overall with this pad of newspaper. And for those who just joined in, I'll point out this piece on the front pedestal over on the right side of the hot shop. This is kind of along the lines of what we're working on right now. Changing up the color, changing up the shape, but kind of that same idea of creating this creature. And we have our visiting artist, Kartini Thomas, and she's the one who's designed these pieces of glass that we're seeing all across the front of the hot shop. She's the one in the blue shirt. And as a lot of you probably already guessed, this torch is used to heat up sections of glass at a time. We're heating up just kind of the middle section of the piece so we can blow that out a little bit further without altering the rest of the piece. That's why we didn't use just the open face furnace to heat it up. But they are running around the same temperature, so 21 to 2300 degrees Fahrenheit. And could I have our visiting artist slideshow for a moment, please? Thank you. For those who haven't seen this yet, up on the screen there's a slideshow playing now of our visiting artist's work, and I could talk about her a little bit for the newcomers. So our visiting artist, Kartini Thomas, she's come in for a full week residency here at the museum, and we're seeing a lot of creatures being made. We have a bunch of these pieces already finished on the cart, on the front pedestal, and on this table right here, which you guys are welcome to come down and take a closer look. We do also have a piece that she made before the residency on the pedestal to my right or your left. Yeah, they're all really interesting. She just came down from Pilchuck Glass School, which is 2 hours north of us in Stanwood, Washington, where she was starting to work on these projects, and then came here to continue to work on the series or the projects in general. And she's usually a ceramic artist. We have a surprising amount of visiting artists that come through that don't work with glass very often, or maybe have never worked with glass at all. And our team that works here full-time is able to take the artist's designs and ideas and translate them into glass, or maybe they'll combine materials together. We had one time like a brass artist who made forms that we blew into, for example. So we have a lot that goes on the hot shop floor, and sometimes even more than you'd expect. Thank you. Now, our visiting artist has her own studio in France, where she's been working there for 20 years. She's part of the Royal Society of Sculptors in the UK and the French National Craft Syndicate, of course, in France. And this is sadly the last day of her residency, so this is the last big piece that we're working on. So it looks like they are done with the overall shape. We'll take a piece of glass and mark the bottom, basically just giving ourselves the target to hit when we bring over a second pipe and attach it to the bottom of the piece. And we're going to do something kind of funky. We're going to be heating up the end of a tungsten bit. We're going to push this into the bottom of the piece while we superheat it. And what this is going to do is, of course, create just a small hole in the bottom of our piece. This second pipe that we attach is going to be a blowpipe with some clear glass in the shape of a crown on the end of it. So when we attach it over the opening, we're able to continue to blow into the piece. Because we do need to take it off of this pipe so we could close off the top. So once we have that pipe ready, we bring it over, attach it straight to the center of the bottom of the piece, and then we create kind of this weak point in that connection, just making it easier to break off when we're completely done and ready to put it away. And then once that connection is secure, we'll break the piece off using a little bit of water. This water is thermally shocking and cracking that connection enough so when we tap the pipe, it just pops right off. So from here, Now we have this small opening. If we were making something like a cup or a bowl or a vase, this is where we would go on the inside and start to lift the wall to flare it out. But instead, the reason we drilled that hole in the bottom is we're going to completely close the top off. All right, just in case you guys haven't gotten the overview, I just wanted to reintroduce what we have going on real quick. So we have visiting artist Kartini Thomas, and she is the one in the blue shirt. Everyone else is working for the Museum of Glass. They help the visiting artists bring their designs to life. And we're actually working on a piece that's similar to the one on the front pedestal here, basically going along with the same idea of like this is a creature and it has eyes and a mouth, and then this overall blown body of glass. So this is the body, of course. We have already made the eyes and the mouth. We just have to finish this off and then assemble everything together. All the pieces that you see out have been made over the last 4 days. Our visiting artist, it's the last day of her residency. And sadly, that means this is the last piece. But on the positive side, that means that we have tons of pieces for you guys to look at and take pictures of if you like. And yeah, feel free to ask any questions that you guys have along the way. I usually just kind of describe the process as it happens. Oh yeah, and can I have our slideshow for our visiting artists on the screen, please? Thank you. So for those who haven't seen this yet, which I think a handful of you haven't, this slideshow on the screen is kind of inspiration photos and some previously made works and some drawings for the residency itself, actually. Thank you. So now that we have this overall piece finished, we can start pulling out the facial features, the eyes and the mouth from the inside of this silver box called the garage. Just one by one, we'll bring those over and attach them on. So for the piece itself here, we're going to keep this at just about 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, heating up specific areas as needed with this fluffy torch. For those who just came back in, we just finished attaching the mouth, and we'll see them attach the eyes one by one as well. And then there's going to be a little bit of touching up they need to do, basically where it's coming off of the pipe or where it's being attached, just a little bit of touching up. Oh yeah, and just to point this out real quick, for anyone that's been hanging out in here for a little while, the museum closes at just about 5, so you have a little bit less than 10 minutes for anything else in the museum, like the store, bathrooms, whatever. But we usually let people stay and watch the finished piece in here if we run a little bit over. So we'll see when this is finished here, but you'll be able to see the end of it. So these are all the pieces connected. It looks like they're just doing some last little touches where they're heating up the center of the eye and pushing in to create more dimension. And then we'll prepare to break the piece off of the pipe when they are done with the touching up. When we put this piece away, it's going to go inside of the large black box over on the left wall called the annealer. This sits at 900 degrees Fahrenheit all day. We just load pieces inside of it. It's kept warm, and then we press a button to slowly cool everything inside all at once, which is usually an overnight cycle or about 12 hours. And that's the last piece of the residency. Let's give them a round of applause for working so hard today. Second piece of the day.